Welcome to the Randy Report. I'm Randy Slavacek, your host. I'm also the writer and editor of therandyreport.com, where you can find me every single day on the internet reporting on the daily news cycle in terms of politics, pop culture, and entertainment news of interest to the LGBTQ community and its allies. In this week's headlines, the U.S. Supreme Court has declined former County Clerk Kim Davis's request to overturn its 2015 same-sex marriage ruling. 17 longtime transgender members of the U.S. Air Force and Space Force have filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, alleging that the Department of the Air Force unlawfully revoked their approved retirement orders in violation of federal law. Wicked star Jonathan Bailey is named People magazine's Sexiest Man Alive, the first out gay man to win the title. All that and more in this episode of The Randy Report. The U.S. Supreme Court announced this week that it will not hear the appeal of former Kentucky clerk Kim Davis, the one-time county official who refused to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples after the landmark 2015 ruling in Obergefell v. Hodges. Justices Samuel Alito and Amy Coney Barrett appeared to signal in recent interviews that the court was not inclined to revisit the Obergefell ruling. By denying the review, the court let stand lower court rulings that found Davis personally liable for violating the constitutional rights of same-sex couples she refused to serve after Obergefell was decided. The move leaves marriage equality intact, marking a quiet but significant moment in a decade-long legal battle over the scope of religious exemptions in public office. Davis, who rose to prominence for her defiance of the 2015 ruling, had asked the Supreme Court to reverse an order that requires her to pay more than $300,000 to a couple she denied a marriage license, and she asked to overturn the same-sex marriage ruling from 2015. National LGBTQ Task Force Communications Director Kathy Renna celebrated the justice's decision, saying in a statement, "Today's decision is not surprising given the long-shot status of Davis's claim. But it's a relief that the Supreme Court will not hear it given the current makeup of the court itself. We hope that this settles the matter and marriage equality remains the law of the land for same-sex couples." Amen. "17 longtime transgender members of the U.S. Air Force and Space Force have filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, alleging that the Department of the Air Force unlawfully revoked their approved retirement orders in violation of federal law. The 19-page complaint argues that the administration's actions stripped the plaintiffs of retirement benefits they had already earned after years of honorable service. Each of the plaintiffs has between 15 and 18 years of active duty experience. According to the complaint, the Air Force issued all 17 retirement orders in June 2025 by order of the Secretary of the Air Force. Those orders were based on the Temporary Early Retirement Authority, which allows members with at least 15 years of service to retire early under certain conditions. The lawsuit states that the orders were valid and binding, and that the Air Force's own rules permit revocation only in narrow circumstances, such as fraud, mathematical error, or newly discovered evidence, none of which applied in this case. In May, the Air Force's Acting Assistant Secretary for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, Gwen DeFilippi, issued a memo stating that transgender Air and Space Force members with 15 to 18 years of service could apply for TARA as an exception to policy. The Air Force approved the plaintiffs' retirements shortly afterward. But in August, the Air Force abruptly rescinded every one of those retirements in a memo titled Exception to Policy for Temporary Early Retirement Authority, TARA Decision, disapproving all pending TARA requests for service members with fewer than 20 years of service. The memo went on to say that those members would instead be eligible for voluntary separation pay at twice the amount of involuntary separation pay, but not for retirement pay or benefits. Apple has removed two popular gay dating apps in China, Blued and Finca, in response to the government's continued policing of LGBTQ-related online content. An Apple spokesman said in a statement, "We follow the laws in the countries where we operate. Based on an order from the Cyberspace Administration of China, we have removed these two apps from the China storefront only." The spokesperson went on to say that the two apps had already dialed back availability before being completely removed. While Finca and Blued can no longer be downloaded from the App Store, users who already have the app can still access them. Over the last few years, the LGBTQ community in China has faced relentless censorship by the government. In 2020, the country's annual Pride celebration, Shanghai Pride, was unceremoniously shut down. In 2022, Grindr disappeared from China's App Store a few days after the Chinese government deemed it problematic. The Chinese government has also censored LGBTQ content within other sectors of the entertainment sphere. In 2021, the government introduced a new policy banning any effeminate male characters, established queer relationships, and characters with no clear gender in video games. Films like Alien Covenant, Bohemian Rhapsody, and Together also faced censorship in China, with their LGBTQ content either getting chopped or altered to fit a heterosexual narrative. In 2018, Chinese broadcaster Mango TV cut Ireland's performance from the Eurovision semifinals due to the inclusion of two same-sex dancers. 3 years later, the country's top 3 streaming platforms took out a segment from the Friends reunion that celebrated the show's LGBTQ fans. This is a big deal. Wicked star Jonathan Bailey was named People magazine's Sexiest Man Alive for 2025 last week, making him the first out gay man to receive the title. The 37-year-old English actor, brimming with charm, wit, and almost unfairly handsome looks, has become one of the most irresistible stars in Hollywood today. In the past 5 years, Bailey has captured hearts as Lord Anthony on Bridgerton, and earned an Emmy nomination for his role as a closeted congressional staffer in the Showtime series Fellow Travelers. Then, of course, there's his 2024 big screen debut as Prince Fiero in the movie musical mega hit Wicked, followed by this summer's blockbuster Jurassic World Rebirth. In his cover interview with People, Bailey says he knew he wanted to be an actor by the time he was 5. At 7, he was performing with the Royal Shakespeare Company in London and has continued to master his craft both on stage and screen ever since. When asked what he thought about being named Sexiest Man Alive, Bailey called the title a huge honor, saying he's incredibly flattered. He also admitted it was hard for him to wrap his head around something so, quote, completely absurd. In 2024, Bailey founded his charity, the Shameless Fund, which works to fund and support LGBTQ organizations, helping to erase shame in the community of which he is a proud part. When asked by People what advice he would give his 15-year-old self, Bailey answered, quote, "Dude, you are in for a ride. You're not going to believe where you're going to end up. It's all going to be fine. It'll be bumpy, and you'll meet some fantastic people. And trust your instincts, because they've got your back." Reminder, Jonathan Bailey's next cinematic adventure, Wicked for Good, where he stars alongside Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande as the handsome Fiero, arrives in theaters November 21st. And that brings me to the end of this episode of The Randy Report. If you enjoy catching up on LGBTQ news in a quick podcast, I'd appreciate it if you'd share it with your friends. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. I like to think of The Randy Report as the 60 minutes of gay news, only shorter. And remember, you can find me every single day on the internet at therandyreport.com, where I cover the daily news cycle in terms of politics, pop culture, and entertainment news of interest to the LGBTQ community and its allies. Thanks for listening, folks. Take care of yourselves. and I'll see you next time.